Reporting there from Israel. Joining us now, former chair of the House Foreign Affairs Middle East Subcommittee, Ted Deutch. He is now a CEO of the American Jewish Committee. Congressman, thank you for being here this morning. We appreciate it. You watch those stories, and the tragedy is those are just 3 or 4 of hundreds of stories that are playing out across Israel.
Right, and thousands impacted. Willie, if it's only been 3 days, and if I could just try to put this in context, those stories are so horrific, but imagine that you're at home, you're rolling out of bed, you're watching this show, and you hear gunshots outside of your house. And then you go into your safe room and you learn that next door there's a couple with 3 kids, and they're all immediately gunned down, massacred by terrorists. And in another house, there's a family of 5, and the husband is killed, and one of the kids is killed, and the wife and 2 children are hauled across brutally into Gaza. They're hauled away as terrorists. And then there's a grandma in another house in your neighborhood who's 84-year-old woman who's murdered on social media, which is how her family finds out about it. And then just to wrap things up for your viewers, then imagine that as you've been in the safe room, that in another house, another family did the same thing to try to stay safe, but the terrorists came and burned the house down. That's what was experienced across Israel many times over. And at the same time, I'll just finish with this. While all of that is happening, Israelis from all across the country are being called up while still in trauma, going to serve their country, and they're watching in some friendly countries around the world, people going out into the streets to rally in support of the terrorists who committed these horrific crimes. Imagine. It's incomprehensible to us, but we have to try to understand the scope of this so that we can continue to stand squarely, not just with the people of Israel, but stand squarely with morality and decency against these kind of horrific terrorists.
Well, since you raised that, Congressman, there was a rally in Times Square this weekend in support of Palestine where we saw support for Hamas, a day after all of this happened, by the way. College campuses apparently tolerating a lot of this stuff as well. As the head of the American Jewish Committee, what are the threats here at home to American Jews? I was just saying to you, I hate when something like this happens because I know there's going to be a line of cop cars outside the synagogue next to our building and at synagogues around the city. Talk about, if you could, the impact here at home of the attack on Israel.
Sure. First of all, the safety of the Jewish community is of enormous concern at this moment. And when you talk about college campuses, it's young people who are standing with the terrorists who went to a music festival where young people were gathered and killed 260 people and raped young women. We worry about what that means when there are people standing with terrorists, and universities will not make clear exactly what the truth is, that we need to stand on the side of the victims and not on the side of the terrorists. So it's a tone that's set on college campuses. We expect university presidents and administrators. This is not an either or side. This is stand on the side of keeping the community safe. And then more broadly, yes, there's a focus on security at all of our institutions around the country, because we've seen this before. When something like this happens, the hatred, the enmity that some feel for Israel and the Jews, because ultimately Hamas was set on slaughtering Jews, that spills over in not just our own country, but we're a global organization. We're watching this all around the world and working with law enforcement to help address it.
Yeah, that has sadly happened far too many times. One angle we haven't explored much this morning yet is this idea that perhaps one of the motivations, or at least the timing of this attack, is the plan for Israel and Saudi Arabia. They're having conversations to try to normalize relations. What's your analysis of that, if you think that's correct? And do you think that those efforts will continue despite this violence?
There was great progress in integrating Israel into the region and into the world. We just celebrated the anniversary of the Abraham Accords, the normalization talks with Saudi Arabia, between Saudi Arabia and Israel, were progressing rapidly. Hamas's goal here is to overthrow Israel, is to run the Jews out of Israel. It says so in their charter that's 35 years old. This is no surprise to anyone. Their goal is to draw more people into war. Of course, they hate seeing what's happening around them, which is the integration of Israel more fully into society. Look, the coming weeks are going to be focused on Israel defending itself, but obviously as we move through this and Israel does what's necessary to defend her citizens, then the focus will get back to how to continue to integrate Israel more fully into the region and into the world, because people understand what Israel has to offer. They want to align. They want to have a closer relationship, and they want to stand against Iran. At the same time that this is happening, there are stories about Iran's potential involvement here as well.
So, Congressman, before we let you go, and I ask you to put on your hat as a congressman, and this $6 billion worth of aid that's become such a topic, we've been talking about it at length this morning. What should happen now in the Congress? What should happen from the Biden administration?
Look, I hear some of the rhetoric around this is unhelpful, to say the least. We should be focused on how to help support Israel right now. And on this $6 billion, Admiral Kirby, I think, made clear what we should do, and if I were in Congress, what I would be calling for, which is Congress should fully investigate Iran's role here. We know that none of the $6 billion have left Doha, so let's keep it that way. None of this money, none of the $6 billion should leave Doha until Iran's role in this is fully studied and understood, so that determinations can be made based on the outcome of those investigations. And then let's take that issue and stop talking about politics and start uniting around our support for Israel and our support for the Jewish community that feels so at risk.
Increasing calls for just that. Freeze the assets again until we can see what's going on here. The CEO of the American Jewish Committee and former Congressman Ted Deutch, thanks so much for your insights this morning. Good to see you. Coming up next, as the war between Israel and Hamas unfolded, Congressman Dan